Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to Warships for our upgrade and commander build video here on the Tier 9 Pan-American battleship, the Los Andes. And this ship has been pretty fun to play once I finally eventually figured it out, and I talk about that in the highlight video. The new Tier 9 Brawler, which I'll link here at the end. And then I have another video coming up in a few days that will be a play-by-play analysis with the ship, which was an insanely good battle, so make sure to check those out if you're kind of wondering about the play style of the ship, so on and so forth. So we're going to go over multiple things today, but I need to start off first talking about what kind of battleship is the Tier 9 Los Andes. And if you're new to the game, or maybe you just recently heard about this new nation line, it is a brawling battleship. You have long-range battleships, you have mid-range battleships, and you have close-range battleships. And Los Andes plays between the close quarters, 12 kilometers and under, and then mid-range, 12 to 15 kilometers, and playing around her concealment. When she needs to take breaks from the fighting, he'll back up this, that, and the other. So let's go ahead and talk more about her armor scheme. So when you're looking over the ship, she has a 32mm bow and stern. You do have to be mindful that you have a flat butt, or flat stern, so to speak, here on the ship. So theoretically, if a large enough caliber would have the possibility of punching through into your citadel. So just be mindful of that. It is a possibility when you don't have as the round sterns most high tier battleships have here in the game. And then you go into this 51mm armor throughout the armor belt, and even for the torpedo protection with also the 51mm deck plating. So you're pretty resilient to a lot of the high explosive spam, except those of like the Japanese heavy cruisers, like I think like Zao, as an example, Azuma, Yoshino. Well, I'm not sure about Zao, but at least for sure with Yoshino and Azuma. German cruisers like Hindenburg that had that quarter penetration, they will pin at the 51mm and higher threshold, and then of course SAP. A lot of other battleships have like this thicker armor belt, or they might just be covered in 32mm like the French battleships as an example. So SAP is a big enemy of yours. Now, despite being high explosive resilient on your deck, you do have, it's not a massive superstructure, just sticks up in a few places, but 19mm, so that's kind of more destroyers maybe targeting you there and setting fires as an example. On your main battery guns, on the frontal plates, it's 330mm, which goes back to a 279, and then also for the rear plate, it's 279. On top, it's 108. So it might be possible. I've had it happen here and there. I think maybe only once or twice I've had one of my main battery guns knocked out. But the good thing here is you have 12 guns or 6 turrets as a whole to keep you going here. And it's kind of fun because sometimes I try to see about the hit points, or not the hit points, but survivability armor of these secondary turrets, but it doesn't show as part of the scheme. When we peel things away, get down to the citadel, it is above waterline citadel. Just barely. It's quite close to just being, honestly, maybe just a waterline citadel, but it looks like it sticks up just a little bit. So you do need to be mindful of your broadside. You can be punished through that, assuming that they've been able to punch through what's essentially this 51mm plate, and then behind the 51mm plate, you have this 381mm plate and 292mm plate down below. And then even if I get in here a little bit closer, you've got a 330mm plate hiding behind. So that will help, but kind of weird that it's, the 51mm means you end up being pinned by a lot of ships in the game. So it does help protect your citadel that much more. So just some places it's kind of a little bit hard to see unless you are looking at the armor just right. So that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the upgrades that we can get here on the Los Andes. So first off, it's 381mm guns that you have 12 of. Your standard reload time will be 33 seconds unless you take the main battery mod 3 in the 6th slot, which would bring you down to 29.04 seconds, if I recall correctly. With having greased the gears on our commander, we actually have a really good 180-degree turn time. It's 25 seconds. Now you could give up that 2-point skill for, let's say, Brisk as an example, or maybe something else. We'll talk about it. and you'd still be doing all right with your turret traverse time. Your high explosive shell damage is 5,350. Nothing per se amazing there, but then the AP shell damage is 10,700. So these aren't hard hitting guns, so to speak, with having the 381 millimeters. So it's kind of more, your damage comes in numbers, right? That you're not like running only like 4 or just only 6 381 millimeter guns, but you have 12 381 millimeter guns. So you're kind of relying on the number. Hull A, 65,800 hit points. You also see there's a decrease in the A defense and maneuverability compared to when you jump up to the Hull B. It's not a massive difference in hit points. You see 65,800 versus the 71,100, excuse me. But we do get some better maneuverability out of it. In addition to AA defense, your AA defense is quite average, meh, so to speak, here on the Los Andes. But again, I'll talk about that here shortly. Your main battery range stock is 17.8 kilometers. We can bump that up to 19.6, which honestly for the tier 9, tier 10, and if you see super ships, is much more comfortable than the stock. So I would recommend going for the hull upgrade first and then doing the gunfire control system afterwards. Speed is 30 knots, maybe kind of average, decently good for the high tier. You can take the Serum mic flag, give you plus 5%, which will bump you up to 31.5 knots, which is nice to see here. Upgrade rise. There's 3 possible ones you could take here. So the first is the main armaments mod 1, which is just going to reduce the risk of your main battery guns become incapacitated, improve the survivability, and reduce the repair time if one of them should become knocked out. As I just said, you've got 6 381 millimeter gun turrets, 12 guns in total, so it's not a huge deal if one of them gets incapacitated, where maybe something like Georgia, we go from 6 guns to 4 guns if a turret gets knocked out. Not as big of a deal. So I don't know how much I would recommend that one, so to speak. I might lean, in terms of a standard upgrade, something more like the Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1, which will improve your secondary battery survivability by plus 100%, with a lot of high explosive spam in the game that will help your turrets last that much longer. I mean, you have your large 2 and 34 millimeter turrets here, and then you have your smaller 127 millimeter turrets. You still have a decent number of them, right? So that's actually, I started off with this upgrade, and then I was getting lit on fires a lot, and I was just getting really frustrated by that fact. So I went with the Damage Control Party Mod 1. Now, the standard action time is 20 seconds for the action time of the Damage Control Party, but with this Damage Control Party Mod 1, you'll boost the action time up by plus 40%, meaning it takes us from 20 seconds to 28 seconds. And I have enjoyed this much more. It has helped with the survivability because you're lacking in the hit points department. You're kind of thinking the top 12, top 15 of the 45 tier 9 battleships of having the least amount of health. So having this has been helpful, and having the longer action time. And I really like this. I tried this, but ultimately I really like this. And before long, you won't need a magazine mod 1 because they're going to be removing the Juliet Charlie combat signal, detonation out of the game in update 13.11, as it's 13.10 now, if I remember correctly. Let me check. Yeah, 13.10. And then they're going to pull out Juliet Charlie, but for now, if you're playing randoms ranked clan battles, you'd be wanting to run the Juliet Charlie combat signal. Second slot, 2 options. Damage Control Party Mod 1 just reduces the risk of catching fire by negative 5% and reduces the risk of flooding by negative 3%. Third slot, your secondary brawling battleship. Ideally, you're going to want to go with the secondary battery Mod 1, which is going to improve your secondary battery firing range by plus 20% and improve your secondary battery shell dispersion and reducing it by negative 20%. If you're not running this, I'd be kind of like, why? The only other one I would really feel like maybe plausible here would be the Aiming Systems Mod 1. Now, I don't believe Los Andes is a main battery battleship. She's not an Amagi. I kind of think of Amagi sometimes when I'm looking at this ship. But this would just reduce your main battery shell dispersion and then only a slight buff to your secondary batteries. So this ship is all about the secondaries. So this is really what you're going to want to take here. The fourth slot, we've taken the damage control system mod 2. This is reducing or improving the fire extinguishing time and flooding recovery time by -15%. Allows you to tank more here in the game. Now, right now, your rudder shift time is the second best in the game at tier 9, only being beaten out by Scarlet Thunder. So rudder shift time -20%. So if you took this, you would drop down from a 13 seconds. I think it's like, is it 9 seconds? No, probably not 9. Maybe more like 10 or something like that. Which should be interesting to take because you could really build into something that is already quite strong, and it helps you to angle in time and having a shorter rudder shift time for a battleship. But so far, I've just preferred taking damage control system mod 2. Maybe I'll test this out at some point on the Los Andes, but for now, I've just enjoyed the damage control system mod 2 because you're brawling and you end up tanking a lot of damage. Fifth slot is the concealment system mod 1. Detectability range of by sea is -10%. Now I don't have concealment on the commander, so this is what brings you down to the 14.2 by sea, and then 12.6 by air. Kind of sizable. I mean, like I think Conqueror at tier 10 gets like 12.7 or 12.8 as an example by sea, not by air. So you really do want to bring your consumer down if you can help it. I mean, you also get the buff of +5% of dispersion of enemy shells at firing at your ship, which means they're getting a slightly worse dispersion, all said and done, horizontally and vertically speaking. So this honestly is just best because you want to be able to take breaks in the fighting and kind of heal up, or let your repair party cool off, let your damage control party cool off after an engagement before you re-engage. So concealment, I think, is actually, it's quite important on this ship, similar to like Prince Ruprecht and Schlieffen as an example because of their lack of hit points. The sixth slot, there's really two options we could talk about. You could take the main battery mod 3. This is going to reduce your main battery reload time by -12%. So what that does is bring your reload time down to 29.04 seconds, and then you take account of like Adrenaline Rush, then you could be seeing, 28, 27, 26 seconds. I myself have just preferred, well, let me finish. And then it's a -13% on your main battery traverse speed. So that 25 seconds, keep in mind we have greasy gears on our commander, will jump back up to like, I don't know, 26 point something, 27. So to me, this is Brawling Battleship. I want to go for secondaries. So Auxiliary Armaments mod 2, this affects your AA and your secondaries. So your secondary battery reload time is reduced by -20%. So right now, if I pull up the secondaries, the 127mm guns reload every 3.6 seconds. Our secondary battery reloads every 7.9 seconds at the moment, and we'll talk more about that here shortly. And then you can also see there's a buff in the continuous AA damage. There's increased damage AA shell explosions and number of explosions produced by AA defense salvos when the defensive AA fire consumable is active. So basically it's just the continuous AA damage and damage from shell explosions. So if I pull that up, you're going to see continuous damage. Now we have it at 346. And then shell explosions is 1,771. So, I mean, it has been nice for some of the CVs that I've run into. There's been a lot since the new patch dropped. A lot of people playing Enterprise as an example, since that just got released back into the game, temporarily at least. But it's mainly just having that faster secondary battery reload time makes quite the difference in dishing out a little more damage here with the secondary battery. Armament-wise, high explosive shells, the 381s, maximum damage 5,350. They have a 34% chance of causing fire on a target, and then you're throwing 12 of these. So that's helpful when at times you feel like you need to be able to use the high explosive. Let's say you're dealing with more tanky Soviet or Pan-American battleships. And then it penetrates 64mm, so you can penetrate a broadside Los Andes or Libertad because they're also 51mm. Armor scheme, or like other battleships that have coded in a lot of 32mm. Initial velocity 804 meters a second. Armor piercing, they do max damage of 10,700 each, and also the initial velocity of 804 meters a second. So it's just power in numbers, so you don't see like maybe a 12,000 damage value that perhaps you see on other high tier battleships, but those also usually come with like 406s or higher, where more typically in the game a larger AP shell is going to give you more damage, right? The depth charge airstrike is 30-second reload time. You get 2 flights, 1 aircraft and attacking flight that drop 2 bombs per payload. So then that's 4 bombs if you drop these back to back, with a maximum range of 10 kilometers. So that is definitely helpful. Have definitely been already using this in the game because a lot of submarines, this, that, and the other. And then you have your funny button, which is the modified secondary munitions, combat instructions. So as I talked about in the highlight video the other day, secondary battery firing range plus 20%, secondary battery reload time negative 15%, secondary battery damage plus 25%, action time 30 seconds. So this, when you activate the F key, this funny button, it works quite well in tandem with the auxiliary armaments mod 2 and also your secondary battery mod 1. So the gimmick consumable is kind of set up where you're building into the secondaries, so you're even that much more deadly when you're activating your combat instructions. Now these progression bar, the combat instructions, will be filled upon 2 things. One is receive 1,000 HP potential damage, 0.15%, hit an enemy ship with a main battery shell, 6.5%. So it's actually as you saw in yesterday's video, we were activating these quite fast, and you're going to see activated quite fast when I do a play-by-play analysis later this week. So the time before you start losing the progress is 50 seconds. Progress lost per second is 5%. Moving into damage control party. As I talked about with the first upgrade, we go from 20 seconds to 28 seconds action time. With the commander, we can even bump this over to 30 seconds. We have a cooldown time of 80 seconds with November Foxtrot. I think we get it down to 76. We'll look here in just a moment. And then we have our repair party. You have HP per second plus 426, but we can get that increased up to 511 with the India Delta, because that is a plus 20%. So I recommend this again if you're playing randoms ranked clan battles with the ship. Consumable action time, 28 seconds. Again, we can bump that up with a certain emergency repair expert on our commander. Cooldown time is actually only 60 seconds, so it's not the standard 80 seconds that you see on most high tier or just battleships in general in the game, but not as good as those other battleships like the Vermont line or like Massachusetts, Georgia, Ohio with the 40-second cooldown time. But you are getting 60-second cooldown time here, which is actually quite nice. Meaning you're able to keep up with the engagements longer in tandem with damage control party, and kind of helping make up for that lack of survivability with having the 71,100 hit points. Yeah, we'll talk more about that because we can get a 5th repair party as well. Now, in terms of combat signals, right now update 13.10, this would be basically the build I would be running. So until they take that nation out of the game, if you're playing randoms ranked clan battles, you want to take Julie Charlie combat signal, which completely eliminates the risk of your ship's magazine detonating. You take India Yankee and Juliet Yankee. This is going to reduce your fire extinguishing time by 20%, your flooding recovery time by negative 20%. You want to take the Hotel Yankee, damage caused when ramming an enemy, plus 50%. Damage received when ramming an enemy, negative 20%. So sometimes you can live in getting a ram off if like the other enemy player doesn't have Hotel Yankee, which is quite funny. We talked about this for the speed, the heal, the November Foxtrot, and getting our cool consumables off cooldown faster. So 80 to 76, 60 to 57. And then for the heck of it, oh, sorry, not that one. The secondary one, I clicked the wrong one. So now we're getting a plus 5% on our range. We reduced the reload time further, and we've improved the dispersion. So now when I pull up the secondaries, you see 3.4 seconds for the 127s and 7.5 with the 234s. Commander-wise, you have a, how to phrase this, you have a unique commander, which I'm going to read from on my screen here. I don't have access to him yet. He's going to be reward for completion of the Battle of Paso de Patria collection, as I clicked off screen there, excuse me. So what's going to happen here is that this commander has some talents like relentless firing, activates once per battle upon hitting enemy ships 175 times with the main and secondary battery shells, -5% on your main battery shell reload time, -22.5% on your secondary battery reload time, and also torpedo tube reload time, -10%, so maybe like the Pan American ships, cruisers as an example. Master and Commander, partially full combat instructions, progress after they are activated twice, and it's going to increase the maximum ship speed, and effect remains active until the end of the battle. So minimum amount of combat instruction progress, 20, and then ship speed plus 5%. I wonder if that's reading, yeah, you activate it twice, yeah. So then you can get your speed up even faster from the 31.5 knots, right? So that's actually quite good if you have him on your ship. And then one of the enhanced skills that he has, which I'll talk about, is the brisk. So he has a plus 12.5% ship speed while remaining undetected. Normally would be 10%. So this is where you might see some people wanting to run brisk. Maybe you've seen some other YouTube content creators running this, because with that commander, it helps this skill be that much more better and a little bit more incentive to take it. But perhaps you're like me, you're waiting for that collection to be done, and we don't have him for the time being. But if you're kind of wondering where that collection will be at, if you go under your profile and go to collections, I think it's this one. It's here. So it's 35 of 60. And normally you would see like a button. I don't know if they'll have it on these. There's like usually a purchase containers. Yeah, like here, purchase containers. And then I think it's going to be like, I don't know if they've actually officially released it, but maybe it's like going to be like 6,000 coal a container. And then you'll be able to unlock him. But unfortunately, I didn't have enough of the festive tokens from the 8th year anniversary to completely finish collection. But we do have some duplicates that we have managed to save up. But you don't want to use the duplicates to the very end. Because that would be bad, and you're gonna pull more duplicates if you waste all the tokens that at least you've been given now. Going back with our commander here, actually want a little bit of a darker background. Okay, so as I said, we don't have a commander with enhanced skills, so this is what I am currently doing the build on. And there's going to be 2, maybe 3 different ways to do the build. I think, yeah, there's 3 for sure. So what I've done, let's say you have a 10-point commander. Well, I've done the preventative maintenance, which reduces the risk of modules becoming incapacitated, like your turrets, steering gears, and engine. And then also improves your main battery, or sorry, secondary battery survivability and your AA mount survivability. In the past, you didn't have those 2, but they added it, and it's made it a little bit more relevant running this skill for secondary battleships, as an example. With a 3-point commander, perhaps you'll consider grease the gears, or you'll be considering brisk with a 3-point commander. Maybe if you're running the unique commander, legendary commander, then you end up running brisk and you give up grease the gears. Because the grease the gears takes a -20 or plus 20%, improving your main battery traverse speed. That's how we're getting the 25 seconds right now. Without, I'm guessing you'd be closer to like, maybe it's closer to 29 seconds or something like that, which still isn't bad, honestly, because one of the things that it's helpful on this ship is your 3 forward turrets reverse like this way, 270 degrees, and your rear turrets go this way, 270 degrees, excuse me. So if you're shooting forward this way with your rear turrets, you're pushing in and then you shift sides, then they have to make like that whole big turn, which takes longer. But this also kind of helps with the kiting aspect of the ship for sure, which is honestly nice. So as long as you manage it, you might be out turning your guns a lot because of how good the rudder shift time is. So there might be a frustration there with some commanders who would prefer to grease the gears over brisk. Let's say you went with grease the gears, and then you just want to go ahead and build into the secondaries right off the bat. So then I'd say long-range secondary battery shells. So that's what puts us up to the 12-kilometer range on the 127s and 234s naturally. And then manual secondary battery aiming, negative 10% secondary battery reload time, maximum secondary battery shell dispersion, negative 10%, maximum secondary battery shell dispersion when fired at a priority target over the course of 45 seconds will give you a negative 50%. So essentially negative 60% all said and done. It used to be back in the day you had negative 60% instantly, but now they've kind of switched it to this can be activated for the other 50% of the negative 10% that you already get automatically when you take this, which is quite helpful. I mean, you're not these guns aren't reloading super fast, especially with the 234s compared to like a lot of the other like Schlieffen or like let's say Ohio when it's covered with 127 on Ohio. So it's nice to be able to run this and make this your secondary battery more accurate. Otherwise, you might be a little more frustrated with your Los Andes. Then for a 14-point commander, I would recommend going for this. I mean, there's two ways you can do it. You can do fire prevention first, or you could do adrenaline rush. I already had this as I think a 16-point commander when I moved him off San Martin, and then I went and bumped up to 17 points. So I could have fire prevention, which reduces the risk of catching fire by negative 10% and reduces the maximum number of fires to -1. So with this skill, we only get 3 instead of 4 fires set on the ship. So you'd have, with 3, 1 on the stern, 1 on the bow, and 1 on the superstructure. Without fire prevention, it's 2 on the superstructure. So then you end up ticking for a lot more damage because a lot of people are focusing their high explosive on your superstructure. So then you want to be able to take fire prevention here on the Los Andes. And this, if you had a 17-point commander, do adrenaline rush, then you're getting a faster or decreased main battery reload time, secondary battery reload time, and a buff to your continuous AA damage as well for each 1% of your hit points lost. So helping your main battery, helping your secondary battery, really good to run here. And then this is where there's going to begin to be some difference in choices, right? So let's say you were going to do the build with the grease the gears, then you might just end up landing on an emergency repair expert. I have been consistently running out of heals. I would really like to take this, I think, all said and done, where your damage control party consumable action time goes up by plus 10%. So does your repair party consumable action time. So that pushes you to 30.8 seconds, I think it is, on both of them. Longer action time, and you get the 5th repair party. You burn through your heals a little bit faster here on the Los Andes because of it only being a 60-second cooldown versus like an 80-second cooldown. So this could be one build, right, that you do on your Los Andes. Or it might be a reflection of what you end up running on Atlantico as an example. The other option to run is doing the conceal build, which would bring your concealment down to 12.8. And then your secondaries fire at 12 kilometers, which is like, really good running these two together. And then if I was doing a concealed build, it could be I decide I keep with the grease the gears, or if I'm running that legendary commander I spoke with you about, the unique commander, I take brisk, because then I get plus 12.5% on my ship speed, taking me from 31.5 knots to what that's going to put you over 34 knots, right? And then if you activate that perk with the commander, then that's going to put you over 35. Is it like 36, 37 knots? Maybe I can put it here on the bottom right. I don't remember. I don't know what your actual full speed would be. So there's a lot of incentive to end up running that. Because as I said in the highlight video, like Los Andes is a ship that she doesn't have a lot of stamina when you compare to something like Ohio, Poison, GK. They can kind of take a lot more punishment long term, where I don't feel like this line necessarily can. In terms of high explosive DPM that's actually penetrating you. If a lot of AP is being firing at you and you're angled, you're fine, right? But to have the ability to be able to go dark and take a breather, let your repair party cool down, let your DCP cool down, and then it might be a combination of like this as your 4-point instead of this for a 21 point build, or you drop your grease the gears and take brisk instead. That could be, so yeah, one version, second version, or third version with the brisk. I'd probably definitely do that with the unique commander. The other option we could probably talk about is, you know, if you want to take something like, I don't know how much it makes sense to run improved repair party readiness. I mean, I've had several battles. The last 3 battles I had all over 2 million potential damage, which triggers a 5th heal, which when you watch the play-by-play analysis I do, you're going to be like, if Flimsy had the 5th heal, that might have made a huge difference at the end of that game. Shoulda, coulda, wouldas. But, you know, at the same time, it's like, well, if Flimsy had the 5th heal with this build, then he also would have been fine. But basically, your repair party comes off cooldown faster for, depending on how much HP or potential damage you've taken, equal to 100% of your ship's base hit points. And then once you've exceeded 2 million potential damage or you've hit it, you get another heal. So you see like other bit like Conquer, Devastation, ships like that actually do quite good with this. Wisconsin does really good with this skill as well. So let's say if you did do that, that would leave you with a 1 point. So maybe you end up doing emergency repair specialist to get your cooldown on your repair party and damage control party faster, or you would take like gun feeder so you can switch between high explosive and armor piercing. Maybe it's a little bit more of a tougher sell for me on this version versus if I did this, or brisk instead of grease the gears. So without being said, we're just over the 30-minute mark now. So let me know what you like running on your Los Andes. I hope this has kind of given you some thoughts of what you're considering to build your Los Andes out to, as you know, the Pan American commanders are a bit newer as you begin to spec them out to reach 21 points. But if you liked today's video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. Until next time, take care.